Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa, the dietitian. For those of you who haven't met before, I have a private practice in the Palos Verdes area. Right now, I'm just doing telehealth due to COVID-19. And the majority of the patients that I work with range in ages from small children all the way to the senior population. And the majority of the clients I work with them to develop a healthier relationship to food. And I also contract with different companies to meet their needs for a nutrition consultations or programs or shows and different things like that. So I'm happy to be here today. And we're going to be making plant slant banana bread and also some fruity chocolate almond bark, which are two delicious and pretty simple, nutritious recipes that can be made any time of the year. But for some reason, banana bread and almond bark do remind me of the holiday season. So let's get started. So for our plant slant banana bread, this recipe is directly from the Blue Zones cookbook. And the ingredients for this bread are whole wheat flour, soy milk, apple cider vinegar, vanilla, baking soda, baking powder, salt, unsweetened applesauce, some sugar, walnuts, and then chocolate chips are optional. And cinnamon, if I didn't say that already. So how you start this recipe is we're gonna preheat the oven, which is already preheated to 350 degrees. We're gonna have our loaf pan ready. You have the option of preparing this mix in either a bread loaf like this or a muffin tin. You also have the option of either using parchment paper, which I've done before, or you can just spray it with a non-cook spray, which I'm doing today because the parchment paper is just kind of noisy and a little bit difficult to work with for me on camera. So we're going to have two bowls, one like medium size, and we're going to add our soy milk. And then we're also going to add some apple cider vinegar. And we're going to set this bowl aside. Okay, so next we're going to take our large bowl, which already has the whole wheat flour in it, and we're just going to add the rest of the dry ingredients. So we're going to add our cinnamon, we're going to add our salt, we're going to add our baking powder, and then our baking soda. And we're just going to whisk these guys together. So the benefit of using whole wheat flour is that you're going to get more fiber from the whole wheat flour. It will change the overall density and the texture of your baked good, but it really doesn't compromise the flavor. So does anybody have a preference of cooking with or baking with a particular type of flour? Or does anybody like notice the difference in density or mouthfeel?
It seems It seems to be more substance with whole wheat flour.
Right, as opposed to the white flour. So it kind of really depends too on what the actual product is, that you're baking, and then personal preference, like I always say, sometimes things do taste better, using a particular type of flour over another. Okay, so then does anybody else have a preference, like white flour, wheat flour, coconut flour, almond flour?
Terry says she likes almond flour, but can make it too dense and she has to play with the amount. She makes pumpkin muffins with it.
Yeah, and those are all great points about sort of just like being flexible and trying, like experimenting with different amounts, because oftentimes the amounts that are called for one particular type of flour just don't convert easily over to another type of flour. So sometimes it's trial and error. Okay, so now that we have our bowl with the apple cider vinegar, it's kind of been sitting in the soy milk just for a minute or two. We are going to add our applesauce. It's about 1/2 cup of unsweetened applesauce. And then we're going to add the sugar. And then we have 3 whole mashed bananas that we're going to do. And I like to just mash them. It's easier if you just kind of like mash them in the peeling. And the great thing about this recipe is there's about 4 servings total of fruits, which is a lot, for a banana bread recipe. And bananas are great. They have lots of potassium in them. Potassium is great for, nerve and blood pressure regulation. Helps with cramping and headaches. And then the soy milk is, of course, a plant-based milk, which is nutritionally equivalent to cow's milk, meaning it still has similar amounts of protein, calcium, and vitamin D, sometimes even more, depending on the brand that you buy. Does anybody bake with soy milk?
Noelle uses almond milk.
Oh, cool. And do you notice, and then we're adding the vanilla for the final step. And with the almond milk and the baking, Noelle, do you notice any changes in the consistency of the finished product?
I don't, but everything, I do a lot of substitutions, so I never know what is, supposed to be.
Yeah. But does it taste good to you?
Oh, of course. Yeah. But
So then that's awesome.
I don't do sugar and I don't do dairy and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, I always feel like anything tastes good, like if it's got a banana in it, because it tastes like sweet to me,
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up about the sugar, because the recipe does allow or call for coconut sugar if you don't want to do regular sugar. And with the applesauce, I've also done a lot of baking with applesauce, to kind of mix it up between sugar and applesauce and kind of do a combination of the two. And the applesauce does really add a lot of sweetness too. And
it seems like
and the banana.
It seems like applesauce adds a lot of moisture to stuff
It
as
does.
well, which is nice.
Yeah, it does. So that's a good point, because I've cooked with recipes, using that call for oil. And so if I use applesauce instead of the water, I just have to be careful of or actually it's called for oil and water. So if I use applesauce, I usually just omit the water. So then we're just mixing the wet with the dry, and we're gonna just slowly combine it with the spatula.
And Marissa, Terry was saying she uses monk fruit instead of sugar, and she really likes it for baking.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't personally used it, but that's cool. Good to know. What
Terry,
does it taste like? What does the
yeah,
monk
does
fruit
it
taste
change?
like?
Does it change the feel or whatever?
With the monk fruit, you mean?
No, I was just wondering if it changes hey, Terry, does the monk fruit change like the consistency, or is the flavor different?
It's I love it. It's great. There's no change. Whereas with stevia, you kind of get an aftertaste, especially if you're putting too much in it. Monk fruit has not done that at all. It's kind of expensive, but I think it's worth it if you're going to bake and don't want to do a lot of sugar.
What's the equivalency ratio like compared
Same.
to? It's the same? Equal? 1 to 1? Huh.
And is monk fruit like a powdery thing like stevia is, or is it liquid, or what is it?
I've gotten it in the bakery, in the kind of the baking section at Vons or Whole Foods, and it is just granules, just like regular sugar. It feels lighter than regular sugar, but.
I'm just going back to the benefits of the whole wheat flour is, fiber often helps our gut bacteria to replicate regularly and also feeds the good bacteria. Fiber is also important for digestive and cardiovascular health. So if you've been on these shows before, you know that, most of these recipes do contain pretty substantial amounts of fiber. So then after this is mixed, we are going to add, I'm choosing to use some sliced almonds in the mix. And then I am going to add a little bit of chocolate chips. I'm going to fold those in. The recipe calls for walnuts, but I'm going to put walnuts on top. And almonds are a big part of the ingredients for the next dish that we're going to make. So I'll save some of the nutrition facts for then.
I like that there's chocolate chips, but like not a ton. I mean, I would love a ton of chocolate chips too, but but that there's a few in there.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. It kind of just adds a subtle sweetness and like you said, kind of without overwhelming it. So then we're just going to pour this in here. And I will say that the recipe says to bake it for, I don't want to spill it, 35 to 40 minutes, I think. And I'm sure it varies with the oven, but that's not enough time for my oven. And I actually cook it for an hour and 5. Because the way that you want to make sure that it's done, of course, is that you want to just put a fork or a knife in it and make sure it comes out clean. So for my oven, it does take over an hour and 5 to be exact. And then on the top of this, and I'll show you, I'm just going to sprinkle some walnuts just to add a bit of crunch. And I like the way it looks too, and it increases the nutrient content by adding additional nuts. So then we're going to pop this in the oven. Okay. So who has questions about that recipe or any of the ingredients?
Would you put walnuts on top of the muffins as well if you're going to make muffins instead of the banana bread?
Yeah, definitely. I've done that before.
They don't burn?
They don't, no. You can also do pecans or, additional almonds. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to cut down on sugar. So I think with the bananas, I might have been able to, I too have been experimenting with monk fruit sugar. I don't find it as sweet as regular sugar, but I'm okay with, letting go of the sugar and using a fruit to sweeten. So I might use less sugar, a different kind of sugar.
Yeah, you could definitely kind of play around and see what works for you. Like you said, the bananas offer up a lot of sweetness already. So maybe you could try just doing an extra banana or something like that. Or maybe less sugar will be fine, taste wise.
Marissa, I've been working with an allergist and he's asked me to stop eating bananas and chocolate because they're histamine releasing foods. Is there something else I could substitute besides the bananas?
You could do you like blueberries?
Love blueberries.
You do like a blueberry bread or just an apple, like pureed apple bread or pumpkin.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a carrot loaf that I make, so carrots are also sweet, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Carrots are sweet. Pumpkin, puree. I was going to say sweet potato, but I don't know if a sweet potato loaf, how that would be.
Okay, one of my favorite recipes, it's literally 3 ingredients. It's sweet potato, peanut butter, and cocoa powder. Cacao is what I use. So anyway, so literally those 3 ingredients and an amazing brownie, I have to say. So
Ooh. That sounds good. The last show we did what did we do? Sweet potato tarts. Very simple ingredients too. It was just fresh mashed sweet potatoes inside of a we did like the pre-made, pie crust, and then we sprinkled like pecans, oats, and a little bit of brown sugar on top, and then baked them. They're really good.
Wow. I have a friend that made a red velvet cake, but she put beets in the cake also, kind of to add vegetable. She always sneaks vegetables into things, but
Yeah.
But I think beets are relatively sweet also, right? Like, or have some kind of I guess there's beet sugar. I don't know.
Yeah, but I would probably to try to get the sweetness of the banana bread without using bananas. Definitely like I said, the pumpkin puree or carrot or sweet potato. Blueberries, the thing with blueberries is they're not exactly that sweet, I don't think, when baked, but you could always combine that with maybe applesauce or apples. Okay. So, any other questions about that dish, or should we go on to the fruity chocolate almond bark?
If you chose not to use as much whole wheat flour, how much less of almond milk would you use? Or soy milk?
Yeah, so it's 2 cups of whole wheat flour, a half a cup of soy milk. So if you just have that, if you did like 1, cup of flour, and then you could do a 1/4 cup of the soy milk.
Okay.
And then you can always look at it too, like if it looks too dense, like I was going to add a little bit more soy milk, but then once you kind of work with it, it sort of blends better. But you can tell after you mix it, if it just seems too thick, you can add a splash of, and more liquid.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So next we're doing, it's called Fruity Chocolate Almond Bark, and it is from, I believe, the Blue Zone's website, right, Tiffany?
Yes.
Yeah. So has anybody made their own almond bark before?
yes.
Yeah, somebody say yes?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was great.
What'd you put in it?
Nuts for sure. I think I did walnuts and almonds. Oh, and I think probably some chia seeds. I'm trying to remember what I put in, but yeah, I think I did that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let me turn off this double boiler behind me. It got hot really quick. Okay, so the ingredients for this particular recipe are dark chocolate. So I'm using dark chocolate chips, and the percent of cacao is about 70 in this particular one. And the higher the concentration of that, that's where you're going to get the antioxidants from the flavonols that are in there in the dark chocolate, as opposed to the milk chocolate that comes in at a lower percentage. And there's lots of benefits for flavonols. They act as, like I said, as an antioxidant. There's some studies that are showing that they could be potentially beneficial for cardiovascular health. So it's always good to hear positive news about reasons why we should eat chocolate, right? And then the other ingredients are almonds. So we're using toasted chopped almonds. And then we're also using dried cranberries too. You can use any dried fruit that you want to. I chose cranberries. And the recipe actually calls specifically for dried cherries, but we're doing cranberries. Okay. So you are going to need either a microwave or a double boiler to melt the chocolate, which is the first step that I'm going to do. Excuse me. And I just have to show you, I got this really cute double boiler. See, it fits It's not too big. It's the perfect size for me. It just fits nicely on this saucepan. It's my favorite. You always want to make sure that you don't have the heat on too high, otherwise you're going to burn your chocolate. And another interesting fact about the flavanols that are, you know, plant compounds of the dark chocolate, are that they do help the body to produce, I think it's nitric oxide, which tends to relax the blood vessels. So it does promote, you know, adequate blood flow throughout the blood vessels, which is kind of cool, which can lower blood pressure.
Marissa, does melting the chocolate change the nutritional content?
It does not, no. Because you're still, hold on. Because you're still eating, you know, unlike steaming, like steaming vegetables, right? So here it looks all melted. It's just melted chocolate.
Yum.
You know, when you steam vegetables and you put too much water in them, then you risk, you know, pouring out some of the nutrients that way. But when you melt chocolate, even though it does break down, you still retain most of the flavanols are in there. So then all we're doing here is we're just going to combine. We're going to combine the almonds. I'm just going to put some. And then we're going to combine the dried fruit. And by the way, the dried fruit does contain fiber and antioxidants as well. You just want to be aware that when you're buying dried fruit, that's the only ingredient, you know, that's in the product. Same with nuts. You know, when you're buying nuts, there's just so many brands and products out there. I think that goes for all foods, right? Like you want to just make sure that you're actually buying that product that you're setting out to buy. Say, as opposed to, you know, a bag of almonds with 12 different ingredients. If you just want almonds, it's not really getting almonds, right? And I'm just mixing it slowly so that everything blends together. That's good. Any questions so far on this process?
How long do you have before the chocolate, like what's the window for spreading chocolate?
Yeah, right. No more than 4 minutes. It's been 3.5. So you know, you have an option here. You can drop them sort of just by, you can kind of just drop it on your cookie sheet. And you're going to line your cookie sheet with parchment paper. And the other option you have is you can just pour it down or pour it on the parchment paper and smooth it out, which is what we'll do. We'll do a little bit of both. And then to be creative, you know, you could always top them with some slivered almonds. So we're just going to pour it here. Then you're just kind of gonna be a little patient and spread it on your parchment paper. And almonds are like I said, a great source of vitamin E, which is an antioxidant. So it helps to rid our body of those free radicals that could do damage to our cells. So
Does
then
it
you
matter? Does it matter if you do raw or roasted nuts?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't matter. If you do raw or roasted. These are actually, I think these are toasted. So then I'm just going to put a little extra almonds on top of here. I'm gonna put some on top of the drops. And then you could even go as far as putting some dried fruit on top as well if you wanted to. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna refrigerate this whole thing until it solidifies and cools. And then what are some other nutrition tips on almonds? So almonds are also a rich source of magnesium, which is important for nerve control. So again, it helps with headaches. A lot of people who experience headaches, would benefit from making sure that they have enough magnesium in their diet. Almonds also have a lot of calcium, which is important for strong bones and teeth. And of course, it's one of our plant-based proteins. So here's the bread. The bread's done. An hour went by already. It's amazing, right? So here's the bread.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Can you
and then you can see how the almonds, they didn't really brown or burn on top. You can also, and I've done this before too, if you're worried about them burning, if you have had that experience, you can kind of just sprinkle them on, toward the end of baking. So that is the bread, and let's cut it so we can see the texture of the inside. Smells so good. I love the smell of fresh baked banana bread right in the house. Smells amazing.
Marissa, is there like a amount of nuts that you would say people should eat a day or something like that, like a dosage?
Yeah, I go for like a quarter cup a day. I think would be good, at least as a minimum. So here's how the texture looks on the inside of the bread. Everything's very cohesive. So all the ingredients, did their job, did what they were supposed to do.
Marissa, is it a heavy bread?
It's pretty dense, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have our almond bark. So here's what the layered one looked like, or the sheet. And then here are the ones that we kind of just dropped on. And these have already been cooled and chilled and solidified. So hold on.
How long do you chill it for?
I at least a couple hours. Yeah. And then you can cut it, and you see how, I'm just gonna use my hands. So it kind of just breaks apart. So depending on, how you're eating it or who you're serving it to, it's what it looks like thinness wise.
And what would be the serving size recommended?
For this particular dish, depends how sweet of a tooth you have. Right? But a square looks like that.
Looks great.
So it's fun, huh? It's a fun festive dish. And like I said, I kind of prefer the almonds on top just because it kind of adds some color to it. And then I know it's hard to see in the camera, but then there are dried cranberries on top too. And so it's kind of just fun to add a little bit more creativity and color. I'll turn it this way. Maybe you could see it better.
Mm-hmm.
Looks delicious.
So that is our fruity almond bark and plant slant banana bread.